Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. When I started playing Animal Crossing back in July of 2020, a lot of people had already been playing it for several months, and all those beautiful island tours were already a thing on YouTube, and the community had already been built up over on Instagram as well. And coming into that, I was super confused about all those different themes and cores and all those terms that everybody seemed to use effortlessly, when I didn't even know what they really meant. And now, after having played for a few months myself, I decided to make a little video about some different themes that you can use for your island. I will try to give you a good overview of them and break them down into what they're actually supposed to be and some items and villagers that are perfect for those themes. And I will also be showing you some beautiful examples of some amazing creators. I will be putting all those names and handles on the screen and also of course in the description box down below, so please do make sure that you check them all out and give them lots and lots of love. Of course, this is in no way, shape, or form a complete list of all the themes, but if this is a video idea that you like, then I can definitely do more parts of this and show you more beautiful themes. And with that, I would say, let's go to class. Alright, first up, let me start by saying that of course you absolutely do not need a theme for your island. You can just do whatever you want. I always say just do what makes you happy, and then you will have an island that you can truly enjoy. And if that's mashing different themes together, then go ahead and do that. I just find that different themes can kind of help guide you and help you find some inspiration that you were really in need of for your island. And looking at all these examples today, it might spark some inspiration for you as well. So I would just say, you know, be open-minded when going into this, but don't be afraid to not follow a theme, and don't be afraid to mash up different themes too if you really want to. Now, the next thing that we're going to be talking about today is the name of those themes. You probably have all heard terms like cottagecore, fairycore, forestcore, and so on and so forth, and so today I wanted to explain to you what that actually means and why there's the word core in all of those terms. So whatever the theme actually is, it usually is just a mashup of one specific word plus the word hardcore. So for cottagecore, it would be cottage and hardcore, or for fairycore, it would be fairy and hardcore. And that way, it basically just means that you're really focusing on this one aesthetic and this one style. Most of you probably expected this, but the first theme that we're going to be talking about today is cottagecore. Cottagecore can also be referred to as farmcore or countrycore, and it is centered on ideas around a very simple life and harmony with nature. Some of the key colors include green, brown, yellow, as well as cream or off-white, but I also brought you another example where a lot of different colors are used and they're just kind of color coordinated. So with a purple roof of the villager, you'd also use, for example, purple flowers in front of their house. Some of the items most often used in cottagecore, or also farmcore and countrycore, are of course centered around the key colors. So especially the entire log furniture set is very often used, but also I find that the wooden furniture is used quite a bit, and with those you can play around with the customization and just kind of make them fit everything around it. You can even customize them with custom design codes, and therefore kind of incorporate some more beautiful designs and other colors as well. Apart from that, because oftentimes of course there are quite a few farms, such as pumpkin patches or just mushroom farms and so on and so forth, a lot of the farming items are used, and because everything is pretty much centered around nature, of course there's lots of trees and flowers as well as shrubs. Villagers that most often fit the cottagecore aesthetic are pretty much also centered around those key colors. So you're more likely to find animals in a way that they would be in the real world as well. So like Maple, who's a brown cub, or Eric, who's a brown deer, or for example also Melba, and so on and so forth. The next aesthetic that we're going to be discussing is the so-called forestcore. Now this one is also very closely related to cottagecore, so a lot of the key items and also key villagers are pretty much the same, but for this theme, everything will be a lot more nature related than it was for cottagecore. So these islands really have lots and lots of trees. Oftentimes you will find a very dense forest, lots and lots of plants and flowers, and nothing that seems to be artificial. With forestcore, there can also be somewhat of an overgrown vibe to it, so lots of weeds and mossy things, stuff like that. And of course, like I said, the key colors and items are pretty much the same, so you'll also find log furniture, as it does seem pretty natural to find. You'll probably also find rocks and those kinds of things, and for the villagers, you will also usually find ones that seem to be relatively realistic. Next up, let's discuss fairycore, also called fairy wave or fairycore. For this theme, there's also a huge focus on nature, but especially on soft pastel colors, butterflies, everything has to do with magic, maybe soft animals such as like bunnies, for example, and of course there is also a very big focus on actual fairies. As previously mentioned, some of the key colors involve all of the pastel colors, but also earthy tones as well as cream is definitely a key color for this theme. You'll find lots of very soft colors, so everything for fairycore tries to be like as soft and as whimsical and magical as it possibly can be. Some of the key items for fairycore also, of course, are very much centered around that. So what I've often seen on fairycore islands are butterfly models, as well as, for example, the doll houses or the Happy House Academy houses to kind of portray some fairy houses. And because oftentimes fairycore islands are pretty much in more of like a soft pink color, they also include a lot of the cherry blossom items. For villagers, there can be a few different things that people go for. Either people try to have very small villagers to kind of give off that like small fairy vibe, and they'll go for the squirrels or something like that. And also, of course, oftentimes people go for the more magical looking villagers. So for example, Judy, who is kind of a mixture of like a soft pink and blue with those sparkly eyes. And then for example, we have Julian, the unicorn. We have Dom, who also has those sparkly eyes. So people kind of try to include villagers who fit that aesthetic. And of course, oftentimes there's also a focus on the house. So if houses are in the key colors that I've mentioned before, then those oftentimes are also very much considered. Now, another theme that you probably consider relatively close to fairycore, but that's actually quite different, is everything based around fantasy, or like a fantasy core, if you will. In this one, of course, like magical and whimsical items play a big role, and things are focused around magical creatures like dwarves, fairies, trolls, and all kinds of enchantments and so on and so forth. The key colors for a fantasy theme, however, are a lot more saturated than fairycore. So instead of going for pastel colors and earthy tones, fantasy islands can really involve very saturated red, blue, purple, anything that you can think of that makes it seem like it's kind of not really realistic, if you will. And so some of the key items for this also include, for example, all the mushroom items, especially also the new Mario mushroom items, because they come in quite awesome colors. And for this one, you'll also find doll houses, probably the butterfly models, gnomes, and everything else that just kind of looks colorful as well as whimsical. As for villagers for a fantasy-themed island, I haven't really found specific ones that work better than others. Because it's such a wide topic, there's all kinds of unrealistic things that can be going on. The colors are more saturated and just a wider palette than for fairycore, for example. Just lots and lots of different characters work for a fantasy theme. And next up, I want to talk with you about kidcore. Now, kidcore is focused on very bright colors, a nostalgia for the 90s, as well as all kinds of kid themes and everything kind of kid related. As mentioned, some of the key colors are just bright colors in general, but for kidcore, there really is no limit. You can use the entire rainbow, neon colors, pastel colors, everything that you can find and everything that you feel fits a very happy and like young feeling island. Key items for a kidcore island are definitely centered all around toys. Now, especially with the Toy Day update that we had in the game, there were lots and lots of different toys incorporated and introduced into the game. There is the toy boxes, there is the clacker cart, there is, for example, the throwback containers that kind of look like small trains that you can work with. And this theme really doesn't have very many limits either. There's so many directions you can go in with this one, and kidcore can also be applied to either like natural looking islands, more city-like islands, just everything that you kind of want to have fun with. Villagers for a kidcore island usually also do kind of seem to have that like kid-like vibe. So I would say that, for example, Joey is perfect for kidcore. He is wearing a diaper after all. And then of course we have Stitches, who has a super colorful kid-themed house. I believe Bob also has that kind of house. And once again, of course, for this you can focus on all the key colors and really kind of embrace all those rainbow colors. Something that also really impressed me was when people designed their islands based on either movies or TV shows. Now for this, obviously, because there's so many different sources of inspiration, I wouldn't be able to tell you key items or key villagers, but I did want to show you some examples. And so I brought you the Tinkerbell inspired island that I actually toured on my channel. So if you'd like to see the entire tour with all the references, I'm going to be linking it down below, of course. And by the way, the creator of that island has also started working on a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory island. And of course, with those themes, with the movie or like the TV show that you choose, you're going to have items and villagers that you like to incorporate. And getting inspiration from movies or TV shows is also great to kind of just work on one specific area on your island. So for example, my friend Lucy has actually done a Winnie and the Pooh inspired area on her island. So this doesn't need to apply to the entire island, but you can definitely grab inspiration from just movies and TV shows, or even like real life scenery, for example. Now, especially with winter and spring, there was also this entire thing of seasonal islands. So you can take a season as an inspiration and do, for example, an entire winter-themed island, or as a lot of people are doing right now, a spring-themed island, which I guess you could call either springcore or wintercore or something like that. For winter, of course, you'd be using some of the winter-themed items such as sleighs and all those festive or frozen items. I think they're really perfect for those islands. And apart from that, I would recommend keeping it pretty natural, maybe using some rock items, and for example, also keeping the flower usage relatively low, as that's just not really a thing in winter. But of course, do whatever you want, have fun with it. Maybe incorporate winter sports, incorporate all kinds of Christmas-themed areas, something like that. And for springcore, people have been focusing on the colors green and yellow and have been trying to make their islands as like happy and as rejuvenating after winter as possible. Lots of times there's a lot of very cutesy items involved and people dress up with the bunny hood or something like that, but really everything is pretty much centered around this. Therefore, of course, the focus for all the villagers is also on the color yellow as well as green, and all the flower usage is also absolutely centered around that. So it's definitely a possibility to just take specific seasons, pick a few key colors that you'd like to incorporate for those, and then just kind of do your magic and have a lot of fun with it. And the last theme that we're going to be taking a look at today is citycore. Now for this one, you are really trying to distance yourself from all of the natural looking islands. Everything is a lot more symmetrical, and you're really trying to pass off that city vibe and maybe even create an illusion of skyscrapers and just, you know, generally city-like buildings. Key colors for this theme involve a lot of gray, obviously, because you're most likely to use a lot of stone items to really pass off that feeling, and also incorporate lots and lots of design codes to, for example, do streets as well as crosswalks and all those kinds of things. And I've also seen a lot of people work their magic with simple panels to actually create buildings, and a lot of the Nook Mile items that you can get in the resident services are also playing a big role. So for example, the vending machines, street lamps, all kinds of utility poles, all that kind of stuff is actually quite frequently used in these city-like islands. For villagers, I think that a lot of people are focusing much more on how the buildings look, because of course for this one the tree branch houses or the log cabins don't really work. But there are a few villagers that might actually be considered for city-like islands, for example, Dell or also Ribbit, because they kind of fit that like grayish vibe and aesthetic. And I think that for a city, maybe not the most saturated colors are used. So more toned down versions of blue and green, for example, those can definitely work, but nothing too bright and too colorful. Thank you so much for watching the video. Let me know if this was helpful and inspirational. I will of course link all of the amazing creators down below, and I will also link additional island tours that I might have done on this channel before that are kind of referring to the different themes. So I hope that this might help you if you're stuck or if you're just starting to play the game. Do let me know if you like this video, and I can absolutely do a second part. There's lots and lots of more themes that I'd love to show you. But until then, I hope you have an awesome time, and I will see you hopefully in the next video. Bye!